Recently, I attended an event at the University College of London, which was mainly focused on Lucy Letby, but also more broadly on miscarriages of justice, particularly in healthcare settings. During this event, I gave a talk on Lucy's case and my forthcoming book, which I'll present to you shortly. I just wanted to mention that this was arranged by the campaign group that probably many of you are familiar with by now, 19 Nurses, which are certainly focused on Lucy's case, but is also interested in other healthcare cases, and particularly nurse cases. It was really nice to be asked by them to speak, and without further ado, I will present my talk and then I'll reflect on the event more at the end of this video. I've written a book about the Lucy Letby case. I know that many of you follow my YouTube as well, and I'm just going to explain a little bit today about that book and about some of the processes associated with it. First, I'm going to tell you why I became interested in the Lucy Letby case. So I would have been writing another book, and I was sitting in my study, and I just came down to the kitchen, and this was on the day that Lucy was convicted. And I started listening to the radio, and at first I felt really shocked by what I'd heard. And those were the 30 minutes when I believed Lucy Letby to be guilty. And I listened to it for half an hour, and I started to hear things that are not contested. No one saw her do anything wrong. She very obviously doesn't fit the profile of someone who would do this. It's a hospital, so you know people can die, obviously. Then it's babies, then it's premature babies, and then I started to hear about these quite arcane methods of murder. I remember hearing about milk and thinking, really? That doesn't sound very likely. So I've been researching the case for some time from that point. I remember very early on as well seeing the confession note, or the so-called confession note. Now, obviously, it's my job to understand language. I mean, it would have taken me 10 seconds to see that this wasn't a confession note. It's beyond my comprehension how anyone ever thought that was a confession note. Even in isolation, of course, there are other notes in which she's written things that are exculpatory. And she's written the name of Catherine de Beger, who told us to write the notes, all over the notes. So I found that fairly extraordinary. So I began to research this case, and I know there were people that were there before me. And it just became increasingly clear to me that it was a very likely miscarriage of justice. So then around the time that the New Yorker article came out, and then the Guardian and Daily Telegraph came out with important articles, I recognised that a publishable book would be possible. I assumed that they would stick with it. I didn't think that they would start this process and then think, oh, look at that item of evidence that indicates she's guilty, because I'd been through that process myself and I knew that wouldn't happen. So I thought a climate would come into view where a book could be published. So I began researching at that time. So I saw this gentleman on Twitter, who's a friend of mine now, who's called James Phillips, who's a prime ministerial advisor. And I thought, he's the kind of person we need to be involved in this. So I managed to make contact with James, and I met him in London, and I explained to him, this is what I need you to do for me. And very kindly he agreed to do that. So he helped connect me with many people that I knew I would need for this book to create a publishable standard book. And then over time, as I became better known, I was able to stand on my own 2 feet more, but he helped me a great deal at first. So in the book, there are many interviewees. There are dozens of people I've interviewed. I'm sure many of you see me interviewing people on YouTube. I couldn't put a precise number on it, but there are many, many interviewees in this book you haven't seen before and that no one's heard from before. So I'm not going to reveal those today, but you'll find out when the book comes out. I've interviewed specialists from neonatology, neonatal nursing, pediatrics, obstetrics, vascular surgery, biochemistry, endocrinology, genetics, statistics, plus many more as well. The process of writing and researching the book was drawing together an enormous amount of research, documents, interviews, and so on and so forth. So I think the transcripts of the interviews alone would have been 1.2 million words. There's millions of words of court transcripts that I've read. We looked at every single document from the Thirlwell inquiry. I was helped by my assistant. I can't mention my assistant's name today because I haven't agreed that with her, but it will become apparent next month. looked at every newspaper article, every documentary, every piece of independent research, and then I spent many hundreds of hours conducting my own research as well. It is very difficult to put a number on the amount of words that I've read about the Lucy Letby case, but it's certainly tens of millions, and I've certainly invested thousands of hours. So there are several challenges with bringing a book like this together. The first one I've just mentioned is the sheer weight of material. Thankfully, I'd written and edited 50 books previously, so I knew I could deal with that, but nevertheless, this was a pretty big weight of material that I had to deal with. Dealt with that, that's not a problem. The second challenge is that no one will talk to you, so the kind of 101 of journalism is go to the primary source. So here, you can't go to the hospital because the hospital won't talk. You can't go to the police because the police won't talk. You can't go to the prosecution witnesses because they won't talk. I'd love to have gone to Mark and said, let me speak to all the defence witnesses, but you can't do that because the Court of Appeal frowns on that. And I've probably forgotten some other groups of people who won't talk, but basically there is only one person who will talk, and if you use your imagination, I'm sure you can... I'm sure you can imagine who we heard that from. The next challenge is constant rewriting of the book. So I actually finished the first proper full draft in February 2025. And then, of course, things are still happening. Things are happening all the time. So you have to keep going back, keep revising things. To give you an example, I wrote a beautiful section about how the cases from Liverpool that refers to the Crown Prosecution Service, how they were never going to be charged. And then, of course, they weren't charged, so I had to take that out of the book and update it. So it's been a constant process of going back. And there's 21 chapters in the summary, and the only chapter I could really write from the material from start to finish in the way that a writer would like to is chapter 17. And all of the others I just had to keep going back and going back and going. So that was challenging as well. So the content of the book is, it begins in the hospital, it tells you the full background to the hospital, then it moves on to the court case. It goes through all the scientific evidence, then it goes through all the anecdotal evidence, and then it finishes off by talking about what we've heard about from Steve this morning, the police investigation. Obviously, I use the term investigation loosely. And it really is to try and there's a narrative that runs through the book to explain what has happened here. I want to be clear on something while I'm speaking here today, is that since day one, the very first day when I mentioned I heard about this on the radio, I've always been looking for guilt. All the time. I've been looking for the signs of guilt because the last thing I wanted to do, I knew how big this needed to be. I knew that I would come out into the public domain. I didn't know I'd be standing here, but I knew that I wouldn't be anonymous anymore. And the last thing I wanted to do is to be defending someone who's guilty. Those signs of guilt just do not exist in this case. There've been thousands of people forensically investigating this case now, and they just simply do not exist. The aim of this book is very important to me. I've mentioned previously, so people may have heard this before, that there was a very important book written on the Birmingham Six by a gentleman called Chris Mullin. And today, I think that the Birmingham Six is often presented as a kind of success of the appeal system, but they were in prison for 16 years. So given that they were completely innocent, I don't consider that to be a very big success. Chris Mullin, and there was also a very important World in Action documentary, that only came out approximately 3 years before the Birmingham Six were exonerated. And there's quite a famous quote from Paddy Hill, who was a member of the Birmingham Six, where he says, we didn't have our convictions overturned because of the government, we didn't have our convictions overturned because of the court, we had our convictions overturned because of public outcry. And that book was a big part of that process, and the World in Action documentary was also a big part of that process. So fundamentally, that was my reason for writing this book, was to try and do something similar to what Chris Mullin did and expedite the timescales associated with the exoneration of Lucy Letby. In order to do that, I need to ask you for something, which is just to buy and review the book. I need the book to be reviewed by as many people as possible to help kind of thrust it into the mainstream. I think it's been a great community effort, and I want to be clear, I'm not being falsely modest or downplaying my role in this, because I worked extremely hard on this book. But I do view it as a community book where I've drawn on the expertise of many people, not just those that I've interviewed, but people online as well. And every effort that people have made on social media and various other platforms has been enormously important in getting to this point where we are today, where Lucy has a level of support that's never been seen for any miscarriage of justice victim in this country. So yeah, all I want to end by saying really is that my reason for writing this book is to try and expedite the time frame for this woman here, because, I mean, sometimes the enormity of what I'm writing about, what's happened, hits me, and she has been through 10 years of hell. It's almost exactly 10 years today, as we're standing here today, that she was thrown off the neonatal unit. And I don't want to be standing here 10 years from now speaking to you about this case. If I have to, I will. But I want her to be out of prison in a time frame where she can still salvage something from the rest of her life. And that's why I've written this book. And I'm enormously grateful for the support I've received so far. But now I just need to ask you for one last bit of support. Myself and my publisher will do everything possible to make this a mainstream, viral book that seeps into the public consciousness and helps shift the needle further on this case. But I just need your support as well. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So it was really nice to have the opportunity to speak. I guess I'm becoming more used to being a public speaker and being recognised. Lots of people did approach me, which was really nice, and it's always nice to meet people and put a face to names and meet people for the first time. So that was really nice. It was held in this rather grand lecture theatre. I think it's called the Gustav Tuck Lecture Theatre. It's quite a beautiful room, and you can see there's like balconies. You can sit on the balcony and watch from above. I was sat right in the front row. And I will say that wooden benches with a very rigid backrest was not the most comfortable thing to sit on for like 9-10 hours, but overall it was a great event. And I just want to encourage people to visit the 19 Nurses YouTube channel, where all the other speeches and talks from the event are steadily being made available. Several of them are already available at the time of recording. Was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year when or was it earlier this year? But anyway, whenever the last event took place, I did presentations from the other speeches on this channel. I'm not going to do that this time because I've already planned my content, and I want to encourage people to visit the 19 Nurses YouTube channel and subscribe to their channel and watch the videos via that channel. So we just agreed that I would have my speech, and if you want to see the other videos, please do visit the 19 Nurses YouTube. I'm not going to be presenting any of them during this meeting. That might change in the future, I don't know. But yeah, if you want to see the other talks, and there were lots of great talks from some prestigious people and some very intelligent, informed people, then please do check out the 19 Nurses YouTube channel. So in the comments section of this video that's on the 19 Nurses channel, someone asked me the following question. How much money have you made by pretending Lucy Letby's innocent? So I'm not going to address the by pretending Lucy Letby's innocent part, because that's just essentially a juvenile comment. I suppose you could say the entire thing is a juvenile comment. And also, before I do go into addressing this, let me just say, I don't have to answer this question. There's no obligation for me to answer this question. I'm just answering it to be transparent, because I always try to be transparent in everything that I do. So I think a lot of people that watch the channel will be aware, but I'll reiterate this. I've ceased all paid work to work on the Lucy Letby case and to research my book, and that has been pretty much since the day of the conviction, so it's the best part of 3 years now. So I stopped doing all paid work. I haven't done my usual job. I haven't done my usual work, which mostly was ghostwriting books, but I would do some other writing projects as well. But all of my income came from writing, and I did one paid job where I edited a book for someone around Christmas last year, and that's the only paid job I've done since hearing about Lucy's conviction, because I realised that I should and wanted to dedicate myself to this case because it's incredibly important. I'm very passionate about it, and if I'm passionate about something, then I'll follow it through to its natural conclusion. So the simple answer to the question is that I'll be about £15,000 in the hole at this point in time, at the time of recording. But then I also turned down numerous projects. I had one project I was doing that I would have been paid quite a lot for, and I turned that down and handed that over back to the client, and someone else finished that one off. And then I got offered several other things. I turned them all down. And then, so if you take all that into consideration, it's at least minus £50,000. That's a conservative estimate. And then I haven't looked for any other jobs over these 3 years. Again, it's a conservative estimate to say that I could be £100,000 in the hole. I could have earned £100,000 from writing over that period. It could be more than that. It could be less than that. That's just an estimate. I don't know how much it is exactly. But you can take whatever those figures you wish. It's entirely up to you. But I'm literally have £15,000 less than when I started. If you want to take the smallest figure, I think it's fair to. You could easily use either the other two, because I could have been doing paid work and I turned down paid work and I stopped doing paid work to do this. So I hope that answers your question. And I will say as well, if you go to Dr. Dewi Evans and say, how much were you paid to work on the Lucy Letby case? Firstly, he won't answer you. And secondly, it'll be quite a lot more than minus £15,000. We actually know how much Lady Thirlwell was paid. Already £500,000. She's probably going to make $1 million out of the Thirlwell inquiry. So you're perfectly entitled to say whatever you want about me. I don't have to answer this question. I could have completely ignored it, but I just want people to know. So now it's on the record. So if people see this written down elsewhere, you can answer for me. I'm not going to answer any of these questions. I'm not going to comment if anyone comments in this way, or I see any comments of this nature. But I did just see this comment. So there you go. Now you know. And I just want to mention as well, while I'm on this topic, people often ask me, I've been asked quite a few times, how do you become a writer? How can I sustain a career as a writer? And if people ask me this, I will give them a lot of advice, practical advice. And then the last thing I'll say to them is what is on the screen now. If you want to be a writer, don't think about it. Stop everything else that you're doing and start now. Try it for 12 months and see how you get on. And then if you enjoy the insecurity and enjoy the poverty and still enjoy writing after those 12 months have elapsed, you might have what it takes. And I'm not martyring myself in any way, because I chose to do this because it's what I wanted to do. But if you want to make it as a writer and derive your living from writing, then you have to make sacrifices. You have to be enormously driven, and you have to have large reserves of dedication, discipline, and you have to have a pretty strong work ethic, I would say. And for me, I just worked flat out for about 12 years until I started this project. And I pretty much worked every day, and writing and my career and my work was pretty much the sole focus of my life, at the exclusion of basically everything else. And that's because I wanted to do it more than anything else in the world. There's nothing else that I want to do. And then when this came along, I realised this is the most important thing I've done in my life, and I'm extremely passionate about understanding this miscarriage of justice and then being able to communicate to people. So I've sacrificed everything over these 3 years of my life to do that. So I don't know what kind of person Black Star 1961 is, but I would suggest that you probably won't have the discipline, drive, determination, etc. that is required to do something like this. So with that being said, my book's going to be released on the 9th of July. I forgot to mention that in my talk, but I think most of you know by now. It's called Reasonable Doubt, Examining the Case of Lucy Letby. I've interviewed over 60 experts, as I mentioned. There's an enormous amount of analysis and content in this book. I've recorded an audiobook that will be released on the 9th of July as well. There's paperback, hardback, and ebook versions. Obviously, it would be enormously appreciated if you could support this. Reviews online are very important, as well as purchases. So if you feel you're able to support this book, then it would be greatly appreciated by myself, and hopefully it can help Lucy. As I mentioned, I do believe that in the case of the Birmingham Six, the Chris Mullin book was incredibly important, and my aim was to write something similar for Lucy's case. So yeah, I hope you found this to be an informative video, and thank you for watching.